industrial heartland of the United States, often referred to as the Rust Belt. A fellow named Pete Anderson is on his way to meet a hunting friend whose name is Marvin Brown. They have a meeting set up at his hunting camp because he and Brown own some cattle together, and they've agreed to slaughter a few of them and divide up the meat. This meeting is to decide who gets what out of these slaughtered cattle.
Hey Marvin, it's Pete. Marvin? Marvin?
Marvin Brown is face down on the floor.
Marvin, I need some help getting this stuff in from the truck.
Pete looks at him from a distance and says, "Very funny, Marvin. You want to look like you're dead?"
Marvin?
And then he walks up to him and looks closer. Checks his pulse, finds none. How endpoint is so small that violent death is a rare thing indeed. Marvin Brown's been there all his life, and he'll be there for his death, too. I spent my career closing murder cases, but I'm not the only one who answered the call. It takes a rare breed to solve the unsolvable, to catch a ruthless killer, to find justice for the dead. That's what it takes to be an American detective.
My name's Ryan Aller. I'm the detective with the Belmont County Sheriff's Office. I've been working homicide cases for 15 years. The day I got the call, I was at home sick. I hadn't taken a sick day in probably 10 years. Aller, we'd had to respond. It's all hands on deck.
What are we looking at? Gunshot. Close range from the looks of it.
When I arrived, I was briefed by Detective Rusty Lucy.
I told Ryan there was no forced entry, there was no windows broken out, it seemed to be ransacked. We had a male who was laying face down, appeared to be shot in the back.
Position of the body tells us as investigators that the shooter was behind the person. Was it a interrupted burglary? Was it someone that the victim knew that they felt comfortable turning their back on?
We discovered a wallet with his ID. The victim has cash on him, which makes us believe that this wasn't some type of breaking and entering or home invasion type scenario.
It did not take us very long to ID the victim at all. The victim used to be the mayor several years ago of Powhatan.
Yeah, it's the mayor, all right. Damn.
Marvin Brown was a very popular person in the community.
Look up at me one more time. There we go.
Marvin Brown had been mayor for a couple of years in Powhatan. He was a big, hearty, husky character. He would help anybody who needed it, but he wouldn't take any nonsense.
When Chief Investigator Aller realizes the identity of that victim, he certainly knows this is going to be different. Murder is ugly, but high-profile murder is infinitely worse. It draws the maximum attention of the press and the public. It makes a very difficult investigation.
There was no weapon found anywhere near the body or anywhere near the scene in general. In the bedroom, next to the bed, was a blanket.
And then near the living room area, we discovered a 9mm shell casing. But our main concern was, where's the bullet?
They see evidence of ricochet off a wall, but they don't find a slug. They think that's very odd.
The bullet, time to really look for it, they would have took the casing as well. That bullet must have been glowing.
The big question is always why. Why is this gentleman laying in his hunting cabin, shot in his back?
The family gathered at Marvin's residence, and we needed to start talking to them.
One of the worst things I did in my entire career is make death notifications, and it is absolutely the most horrible thing you can imagine.
It was a pretty big shock for the family.
Detective Aller said that there was foul play, that somebody shot him.
I was so upset and mad that somebody did that to him. Shot him in the back. You're making me crying. My dad was a tough guy. He was 70 years old and you still couldn't keep up with him. He was very healthy. He came back from the Army and Dad was a union leader down at the steel mill where he worked at for about 30 years.
At the time when the mill started closing down, he was resilient. He's like, I gotta find something else. That's what he did.
Marvin is a wealthy man. He owns an extremely successful contracting business.
He ran for mayor for a number of reasons. My dad was a leader, and that's what he always stressed all our life, be a leader.
Even though Marvin hadn't been the mayor for 20 years, everybody called him the mayor. Marvin was a force of nature in that small town.
A lot of people could, when you walk into someplace, they go, hey, Mayor, just messing with him.
I know this has been extremely distressing for all of you, but I do need to speak to Mrs. Brown.
Aller is also aware that Marvin Brown has a second wife. The new wife's name is Deborah, who he's been married to for 10 years.
He absolutely loved Deb. Always a happy marriage.
Deborah works with Marvin in the business. She is his bookkeeper. She's responsible for the payment of bills and payroll and that sort of thing. Marvin and Deborah are partners in business as well as in life. They make a great team. She has a daughter. Her daughter's name is Meredith, and this daughter is pregnant. Meredith is not Marvin Brown's child. She's his stepchild, but he treats her as if she is his own.
Dad loved all his stepchildren, and he was especially close to Meredith because she was youngest.
I mean, it was a pretty stressful night. Deborah Brown had taken her daughter, Meredith, to the hospital because of the problems with her pregnancy.
So the sons are there, but mom and daughter are not. Marvin Brown's stepdaughter, Meredith, is having pregnancy issues, probably as a result of this shocking murder. So her mother has decided to take her to the hospital to be evaluated.
Can you walk me through where you've been today?
The first idea is to establish alibis. What was everybody doing the day Marvin died? Are shopping for baby furniture for the new arrival. They have no opportunity to commit the offense.
Thank you.
Aller's task is to have this crime scene speak to him in some way and tell him what can be learned.
The way we viewed everything on scene, it was pretty apparent that somebody had snuck up on this victim.
You immediately begin looking at the individual who made the call, and that's Pete Anderson.
The 911 caller was a friend of Marvin's. A lot of times, it turns out the people that called 911 had something to do with the death.
He was in from out of town. It was just very odd that he was there during this instance.
What are you doing here, Pete Anderson? How long have you been here? Did you kill and then make the call as if you discovered him? That's entirely possible. Pete Anderson is now in an interrogation room at the police department, as he is the one who is present when the police arrive with Marvin Brown dead on the floor in front of them.
We just want to make sure you're not involved in his death in any way.
Sure, I understand.
This person supplied us with their movements and receipts, and through ATM cameras, we proved 100% he definitely was not anywhere near Belmont County when Marvin was shot. We were able to rule him out as a suspect almost immediately.
In homicide investigations, the expression is you run the wickets. You do what is obvious first, and what is next obvious next, and so on. And that's what they've done with Pete Anderson.
All right, thank you for your time.
So the next step is for Rusty and Aller to go to the coroner and have him tell them about this gunshot wound.
Mr. Brown was shot through the upper to mid portion of the right back. Without some kind of contraption set up to hold a gun and shoot himself, it's almost impossible for this to be a suicide. He didn't have what we call defense wounds on the hands and forearms, so it appears that he was not involved in an assault or a fight situation, and that he was quite surprised from behind.
The shooter took advantage of the situation. He's there to kill Marvin Brown, and rather than confront him, he just shoots him in the back.
Very good health for his age. His heart was normal shape and size. I would have expected him to live another decade or two if this trauma did not happen to him.
The day after Marvin was killed, I was just interviewing family and friends all day long. We interviewed Deborah Brown, Marvin's wife.
Then he took that opportunity to ask a few more questions.
Can you think of anyone that might have had a grudge against Marvin?
Marvin is widely known as someone not to be trifled with. He has a long history, and long histories can come back to haunt you.
There was this one thing that happened a few weeks ago. We didn't think anything about it at the time.
One of the things we were told by Deb was that Marvin had had a crossbow stolen from his cabin.
Deborah recalls that there's a guy named Rex Jocelyn who apparently had stolen a crossbow that Marvin used for hunting.
Marvin went out, and when he came back, he had the crossbow. But he never told us what had happened.
So she assumed that they had a confrontation of some sort. Is that enough to kill for him? What if his manhood was insulted because he got his ass handed to him by a 72-year-old man? That certainly would do it, now wouldn't it?
When we learned about this crossbow being stolen, we definitely had a possible motive for Marvin's death. It was the best one we had.
So we need to have a conversation with Mr. Jocelyn and find out where he acquired his taste in crossbows.
I'm Detective Aller with the Belmont County Sheriff's Office.
We'd like to ask you a few questions.
I was able to get a time for the whole day. I confirmed with this person's foreman, and I proved that they were nowhere near when Marvin was killed.
The frustrating thing about homicide investigation is 90% of the time, you're pursuing things that turn out to be nothing. You still have to run the wickets. Several more weeks pass, and Chief Investigator Aller is in the same boat he's been in. He's eliminated 2 suspects. He's established a solid alibi for all 5 of the current family members, and he doesn't have a hell of a lot else.
Tell you what, on this case, from day one, this is definitely going to be a long haul. And you're like, oh, this ain't going to be good.
In Powhatan, people would look right at me and say, I hope they get who did this. This left a void in Powhatan.
Pretty much right off the bat, Marvin's sons, they wanted to help. One of the things they talked about was, should we post a reward?
And he said, if we dry up...
Money complicates everything, and it complicates the truthfulness of humans. People will say anything to get their hands on money. They will point the finger at their own mother.
But enough time had passed. I said, I think now's the time to go forward with your guys' idea of putting a reward out.
I think we started off at $10,000 and we ended up raising it to $50,000 by the end.
$50,000 is a lot of money for anybody, let alone somebody in Powhatan Point. Aller's phones light up in headquarters. Everybody and his brother calls in who absolutely knows who's responsible for this case, for killing Cock Robin and starting the Second World War, if they will just give them the 50 grand. It's been weeks, and Aller has nothing of substance, and there is no worse feeling in the world.
There's a crippling little voice in the back of my head saying it's never going to close.
He is feeling the fear that creeps in of not solving something. I've had that fear. It's horrible. You don't sleep. You are consumed by it. Aller is wading through this mess of people. He finds one. And it's interesting when you find one like this. You just feel it in your bones. A woman calls. The woman's name is Hattie Connor. She reports that she is friends with Meredith.
Hattie Connor gave us our first real break on this case.
Meredith called her and asked her to do her a favor. Marvin's accountant wanted to speak to Marvin suddenly about a concern he had about missing funds from the bank accounts. And Meredith wanted her friend Hattie to call Marvin Brown and pretend to be from the accountant's office so that that meeting could be postponed. Well, how would Meredith know that Marvin's accountant was trying to get a hold of him in the first place? Because Meredith's mother, Deborah, is Marvin Brown's bookkeeper.
Meredith said that her mother needed some time to deal with something.
So, she wanted you to call Marvin Brown and pretend you're from the accountant's office?
Eddie Connor says her mother was in the room, and Mom said, that doesn't sound right. And so she didn't. She never did make that call.
We had to ask ourselves, how much is Meredith involved in all this?
And Aller said, oh my, Eddie, your mother was right. Thank you very much. The old expression applies. When in doubt, follow the money, and it will lead you to the truth.
Thank you.
So Aller is finally getting somewhere. He's got something to chew on. Doesn't prove anything, but it certainly puts him in the ballpark.
As far as looking at the finances of Marvin's company, to dismiss an appointment to keep the owner of the company away from something, this guy just got murdered.
Why would Meredith want to stop this meeting? Is she somehow involved in all of this? That's the question. The answer is to start following Meredith around. So they put an undercover cop on her tail.
Our investigation showed that Meredith had a drug habit. She had a very large pill problem. She was involved with multiple people that were known drug dealers.
So now this cop starts asking questions around town about sweet little Meredith.
At the time, Meredith was an attractive girl.
People were telling us that she used drugs and she manipulated men through sex for drugs and money. No one had anything good to say about Meredith. Everything we learned about her was more suspicious as time went on.
Aller knows he's onto something, but he's not exactly sure what. Meredith had been shopping for baby furniture the whole time and has an ironclad alibi for the moment the murder happened. What he does know is that Meredith is living far from an average life, and she has a habit that she needs to feed. Not only that, but he knows that she tried to trick Marvin into missing a meeting with an accountant. But the question is, why would Meredith want Marvin dead?
The next step was to learn more about the financial stuff. We identified Marvin's accountant and reached out to that person. We learned that finances were not good. The money was screwed up. Deb had not filed a tax return for several years.
So, what are you up to, Deborah?
Thank you very much for your time.
Through search warrants and court orders, we obtained all the financial records from Marvin and Deb's bank accounts. There was a probate hearing where Deb was ordered to turn over the accounting records that she was in charge of. I was given those, and I'm looking, I'm like, whoa, wow. Whoa, I mean, it was, to a lay person like myself, no problem seeing that these are two different sets of books. The books that she turned in, they were fake.
Aller looks at withdrawals made by Deborah from ATM machines in cash, thousands upon thousands of dollars. When you're a homicide detective, you have to become a priest, a marriage counselor, a psychiatrist. One of the things he's had to become is a amateur accountant. Deborah is covered in a cloud of suspicion. So then the question becomes, all right, Deborah, let's say you're a thief. So where's the money?
71 Roger.
Deb doesn't appear to be someone that's living large. If someone is stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars, they're driving a brand new car, fancy vacations, things like that.
Subject's on move. I'm following.
What are you up to, Deborah? What exactly do you need the money for? Now it becomes more than a pursuit of the money. It becomes a pursuit of what you did with it.
In talking to different confidential informants in the Powhatan area, we learned not only Meredith had a bad prescription pill problem, Deborah did as well.
And when we come to find out, Deb's putting down $500 to $700 a day for pills for her and Meredith.
Both Deborah and Meredith are drug users. That's where the money goes. It goes to narcotics, as it always does. People think they're magic. They are black magic.
On top of that, she's got a huge gambling problem. So she's popping pills, spending this money all day long. When she's out of it, she goes out the ATM and takes $500, $700 out all day, every day. If you look at a withdrawal for, let's say, $500 from an ATM right next to her favorite gambling parlor, I mean, she literally deleted that transaction from the books that she had turned into the court.
The most dangerous machine in the casino is the ATM. Deborah's taking $500 hits in the ATM machine that's located across the street from her favorite casino. How convenient. In light of this new information, things appear a little different. The detectives begin to reassess the behavior of the widow, starting with the day of the murder.
I remember that day. One thing that stood out is Deb kind of just took off. We had learned that Meredith was having some pregnancy issues. I thought it was very weird. There were multiple other family members that could have took her. This is her husband laying murder. She just kind of takes off.
So now Aller develops a new theory of the case. Mom and daughter have a great alibi, but they have the right companions, ones that will kill for money. 6 months since this investigation gets underway. So now we know that this mother-daughter team, Marvin Brown's wife and stepdaughter, have been robbing him blind for years, and they were about to be found out. When Marvin discovers their thievery, their life is going to change dramatically for the worse. Well, they can't have that. They have a good alibi, but they certainly know the right people. Perhaps one of them would take care of this problem by removing Marvin Brown from this.
She's about to get found out. And then this guy ends up dead 2 weeks later. We didn't have enough to charge Deb with a murder at this point. But she's stealing money, she's making fake books. So we applied and got a search warrant for Deb's house. You never know what you're going to come across in these types of searches. We found something very interesting.
Mrs. Brown, we'd like to take a look inside the safe.
It was in a gun safe. Deb had the combination to it. We found a box for a compact 9mm pistol.
Miss Brown, do you have any idea where the gun is in this box?
Where is the gun, Deborah? I don't know. I haven't seen it since my husband bought it. Now, is it possible that Deborah's lying? No, that's the question.
And it had the serial number of the pistol on it. And we were able to trace that back and find out who sold it. This gentleman, he actually remembered the transaction, and he's pretty sure that Marvin said that he bought it for his wife. No one ever known him to own a 9mm. So finding out that he bought one, and that his wife had access to it and it's missing was huge for us.
Now he has a set of cooked books. He has an empty gun box of the correct weapon, made by the correct company. And all fingers point at Deborah Brown.
She was at that point interviewed about the financial crimes. She knew we had her for all the financial stuff, so she committed to taking the money for the drugs and the gambling and whatnot and hiding it from Marvin. But she held fast on not knowing anything about the murder. We could tie her to the embezzlement, but to put her directly in the murder in a court of law, we weren't there yet.
Stand up. Deborah Brown, I am arresting you on suspicion of fraud.
Aller is absolutely convinced that Deb and her daughter Meredith are the masterminds behind this death. But Aller can't prove it. He can't put a gun in their hand. He can't put them at the scene. He has no evidence to support it. So Aller decides the best pathway to that information is to start arresting the associates of Deborah and Meredith for sale and
associates of Deb and Meredith we could think of. We squeezed them hard. And we ended up busting several of Meredith's drug dealer boyfriends for trafficking drugs. We want information. We want help.
They arrest a number of these people, but they tell them nothing. But there's one guy whose name keeps coming up again and again. And his name is Stephen Moore.
You should talk to Stephen Moore. That guy hangs around Meredith all the time.
Stephen Moore's a resident of Powhatan. He's well known to the sheriff's office, extremely long criminal history for theft and drug offenses. Moore had been involved with Meredith for several years. We definitely started looking at Moore for being involved in this homicide. This whole operation was our last shot, and we had to do it just right. Hey, what's up, man? An officer spent about a year working on this, and was finally able to get into Stephen's circle and started purchasing drugs on a fairly regular basis off Stephen. But finally, we executed a search warrant at Stephen's house. And right then and there, I told him, you're done solid on this drug case, and I want to talk to you about Marvin Brown.
Tell me what happened, Stephen.
Casey, here's the hell up. I want to help you out.
Stephen said, hey, yeah, I do want to talk. And at first, I'm like, I just can't believe, because the whole time on this case, I'm like the dog that gets kicked, but finally it's starting to happen.
Stephen is surrounded by demons. Stephen has to stop feeling this way. If you don't kill every day, the guilt eats at you. You begin to see the victim in people's faces. You begin to see all sorts of demons come out of the darkness because you're a murderer.
I need help. I need help to get to the people that put this into motion. I knew you killed Marvin. I want you to tell me the truth.
Marvin noticed that there was something that he had an appointment with the accountant, and there was money wasn't there or something. And he found out about it, and he was supposed to, I don't know. That's why she wanted somebody to cancel the appointment.
Did she tell you?
They had to give him more time to get what they wanted to do.
Which was what?
I guess to have him taken care of.
Right off the bat, Stephen was talking about the accountant. Stephen said Meredith planned to have the accountant called by someone else to give Meredith and Deb time to plan the murder of Marvin.
Their mom would pay somebody if they could get rid of this.
Get rid of what?
Him. Kill him? Yeah.
And then, as he's telling me everything, all this guilty knowledge starts leaking out.
But I know you had a weapon. What kind of weapon did you have?
I think it was a high point.
A high
9mm.
So who gave you that gun?
Meredith.
You got a guy and you're telling you're screwed unless you cooperate with me, that could still be viewed as you're making someone tell you what you want to hear. You don't want that in an interrogation room. You want the truth. So there's lots of things we build into these interviews to make sure that the person that's confessing to us has guilty knowledge.
Stephen lays this out chapter and verse. He matches every fact of the crime scene, including a weapon, all the right things. It's him, without doubt.
You're not a killer. No killers. You're not alone. You did this. And it wasn't you. Someone made you do this. Don't let her win, Stephen. Tell me what happened.
You shot Marvin Brown. Stephen, who shot Marvin Brown? Me.
And eventually, he owed up the fact that he was the one that shot Marvin.
Stephen tells Aller that Deborah gave him $12,000 to kill Marvin Brown.
You call me when it's done.
He was given a high .9mm, the same model that's missing from Marvin's house, that we never released to a soul. It was slapped in his hand by Devin Meredith, along with a bag of pills and $2,000 down. Kill Marvin, then we'll give you another $10,000.
Stephen tells Aller in his confession that Meredith told him when he should be at the cabin, as she had set up her alibi to be furniture shopping for the baby. Stephen was in the
Where were you?
Over here under a blanket.
and was hiding under a blanket next to the bed.
Back to the crime scene. Right next to that bed was a blanket, just like he said. No one knew that. No one knew that. But you had been at that crime scene. And I'm at this point, I'm just like, oh, tell me more, Stephen. Tell me more. I walked up behind him and I shot him right in the back. I saw a bullet. I picked up the bullet and I left. I said, why didn't you take the shell casing? He says, I didn't see it.
Stephen the genius says, I didn't see it. Oh, okay. I forgot you're a moron, Stephen. That's probably my fault.
Stand over, please. Stop right there. Place your arms behind your back.
So Aller now has what he needs. A detailed confession of how this crime occurred, and it was planned by Deborah and Meredith. That certainly should do it, but somehow, maybe it's just not going to.
It was 5 years before it came to a conclusion. The prosecutor and the assistant prosecutor who ran this case wanted to be very cautious.
When you are asking a jury to believe a witness, you must be able to convince a jury that this person is credible, that their information is reliable, and they certainly can't do that with Stephen Moore.
Stephen Moore's stories begin to change, going to be possible. possible in a court of law.
Stephen is an unreliable witness. He does not have a specific way to prove he ever received $12,000 from anyone. So in the opinion of the district attorney, none of that adds up to clear and convincing. March 20th, 2015, Deborah Brown pleads guilty to theft and tampering with evidence. She serves 3 years in prison for these crimes. She's released, and a few months later dies of cancer and has to answer to a higher authority. And exactly 3 years later, March the 19th of 2018, Meredith is arrested.
Well, we were able to get an arrest warrant for Meredith based off of Stephen's confession. At that point, she had moved. She was in West Virginia. We had to supply West Virginia with the warrant affidavit. Somehow, my affidavit ended up in the hands of a local news media. When it became public record and was on 5 o'clock news, it's ruined. Meredith was indicted for other crimes. She was not indicted for the homicide.
Meredith was convicted of obstruction of justice and is sentenced to 2 years home confinement. Neither woman was charged with murder. Stephen, on the other hand, decides to plead guilty to first-degree murder in the death of Marvin Brown. He is sentenced to life in prison plus 17 years in the state of Ohio, where he remains today.
I lost hundreds of hours of sleep over this case. From 2013 to 2018, it's an eternity to work a murder case.
I think people still feel that not everyone who had a hand in it has been brought to justice.
Just the disappointment of Deborah and Meredith getting away. I would gladly let Stephen walk away to watch them two go to prison the rest of their life.
There's so many things that, both of Chris and myself and my brother Mike, our kids have done a lot to be proud of, and my dad would have.
Aller didn't get all that he wanted. You stay on a case after 1 million dead ends because you took an oath to be the voice of someone whose voice has been silenced. That's what you said you'd do. And if you said it, you better have meant it. Everybody I know meant it.